The letter arrived on cream-colored paper with gold embossing. Dear Mr. Harrison, after careful consideration, the Rosewood Country Club Membership Committee has voted to terminate your membership effective immediately. You are not a good fit for our club's culture. I read it twice, then picked up my phone and made a single call that would cost them everything they held dear. I never thought I'd be the type of person to join a country club. Growing up in a trailer park in Ohio, my idea of luxury was when Mom could afford the name brand cereal. But 3 years ago, everything changed when I sold my fintech startup to Goldman Sachs for $180 million. At 28, I went from eating ramen noodles to having more money than I knew what to do with. My financial advisor, Richard, suggested I join some exclusive clubs to network with other high-net-worth individuals. It's not just about the money, he said, it's about building the right relationships. The Rosewood Country Club was his first recommendation. Founded in 1892, it was where old Boston money played golf and made deals over single malt scotch. The membership fee was $50,000 plus a $500,000 initiation fee. Pocket change for me, but I remember thinking it was more than my parents made in 10 years combined. The application process took months. References from 3 current members, a background check, and interviews with the membership committee. I jumped through every hoop they put in front of me. When I got the acceptance letter, I felt like I'd finally made it. I wasn't that scared kid from the trailer park anymore. I was someone who belonged among Boston's elite. My first day at Rosewood was like stepping into a movie. The clubhouse was a sprawling Georgian mansion overlooking the harbor with manicured lawns that probably cost more to maintain than most people's salaries. Inside, oil paintings of long-dead members lined mahogany panel walls, and everything smelled like leather and old money. I dressed carefully that first day. A navy blazer, khakis, and leather shoes that cost more than my first car. But somehow, I still felt like an imposter. The other members had this effortless confidence, like they were born knowing which fork to use and how to tie a proper Windsor knot. The subtle snubs started immediately. During lunch, I introduced myself to a group of older gentlemen at the bar. Marcus Harrison, nice to meet you, I said, extending my hand. One of them, a silver-haired man named Preston Whitmore III, gave me a limp handshake and asked, Harrison? I don't know any Harrisons. Which family are you from? When I explained I'd recently moved from Ohio after selling my company, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Oh, Preston said, the word dripping with disdain, new money. The others nodded knowingly, like I just admitted to some shameful secret. At first, I tried to fit in. I learned to play golf, though I was terrible at it. I attended the wine tastings, nodding along as members discussed vintages from years that cost more per bottle than most people's rent. I even bought a sailing yacht, thinking it would help me connect with the other members who seemed to live on the water during summer months. But nothing worked. The conversations would die when I approached. Invitations to private dinners never came. During business discussions, they'd politely change the subject when I tried to contribute. The message was clear. My money might have bought me a membership, but it couldn't buy me acceptance. The worst part was how they treated my girlfriend, Sarah. She was a teacher from my hometown who I'd been dating since before I made my fortune. She was kind, funny, and the most genuine person I'd ever met. But she didn't have the right pedigree for Rosewood. During the annual spring gala, I watched as the wives of other members literally turned their backs on Sarah when she tried to join their conversation. One woman, Margaret Cabot, made a point of loudly discussing her daughter's debut at the cotillion, then looked directly at Sarah and said, of course, these traditions are only meaningful if one understands their significance. Sarah spent most of that evening in the bathroom, crying. That's when I knew I had to do something. Things got worse after the gala. I started noticing little things that weren't so little. My golf tee times were mysteriously double-booked. The valet would forget where he'd parked my Tesla while carefully remembering every Bentley and Mercedes. During member meetings, my suggestions were politely ignored, even when they made financial sense. The breaking point came during the club's annual charity auction. I donated a week at my new house in the Hamptons, valued at $25,000. When the auctioneer presented it, Preston Whitmore stood up and announced, while we appreciate all donations, some properties may not meet our members' standards. The room fell silent. He was publicly humiliating me in front of 200 people. But I didn't back down. Instead, I stood up and said, you're right, Preston. My place probably isn't fancy enough. Instead, I'd like to donate $100,000 directly to the charity. I wrote the check right there, in front of everyone. The applause was polite but tepid. I'd committed the ultimate sin. I'd shown them up with my new money. That's when the whisper campaign started. Margaret Cabot spread rumors that I was under FBI investigation for insider trading. Another member, Thomas Beacon, told people I'd bought my degrees from a diploma mill. None of it was true, but truth doesn't matter when you're dealing with people who've mastered the art of character assassination. The final straw came when I discovered they were trying to recruit Sarah's replacement. Preston's nephew, a hedge fund manager named Chip, started showing up at club events with a different young woman each week. During one particularly awkward dinner, Margaret made sure to seat Chip's date next to me, then spent the evening pointing out all the qualities that made her suitable for club life. Muffy attended Miss Porter's school, Margaret said loudly enough for the whole table to hear, just like my daughter. It's so important to have the right educational background. Then she looked at Sarah and asked, "Where did you attend finishing school, dear?" When Sarah explained she'd gone to Ohio State, Margaret's expression was priceless. "How public," she said, like Sarah had just admitted to robbing banks. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them what real power looked like. I hired a private investigation firm, not some cheap outfit, but former FBI agents who specialized in financial crimes. "I want to know everything about Rosewood Country Club," I told them. Every debt, every scandal, every skeleton in every closet. What they found was better than I could have hoped for. Rosewood was in serious financial trouble. The club had been operating at a loss for years, bleeding money on maintenance for the aging facility, and declining membership as younger wealthy people chose different kinds of exclusive venues. The real gold mine was in the financial records my investigators uncovered. The club owed $15 million on their mortgage, held by Beacon Trust Bank, a small, family-owned institution that had been serving Boston's elite for over a century. The irony wasn't lost on me that it was owned by the same Beacon family whose son Thomas had been spreading lies about me. Even better, Beacon Trust was struggling too. They'd made some bad investments during the recent market volatility and were quietly looking for an investor to shore up their capital reserves. My investigators found out they needed at least $50 million to meet regulatory requirements. But here's where it got interesting. The club's mortgage was actually in default. They'd been making minimum payments for months, and Beacon Trust was preparing to foreclose. The only reason they hadn't was that Thomas Beacon didn't want to embarrass his prestigious clients. I had my lawyers quietly reach out to Beacon Trust with an investment proposal. I would inject $75 million into the bank in exchange for a controlling interest and a seat on the board. To Thomas Beacon, desperate to save his family's legacy institution, it must have seemed like salvation. What he didn't realize was that I was also negotiating to purchase the club's mortgage as part of the deal. My lawyers buried it in page 47 of a 200-page investment agreement, listed as acquisition of certain distressed commercial real estate loans. The signing took place on a Tuesday morning in Beacon Trust's mahogany-paneled conference room. Thomas Beacon looked relieved as he shook my hand, probably thinking he'd just save his bank and his reputation. "Welcome to the board, Marcus," he said. "I think this partnership will be very beneficial for all of us." If only he knew. The next few weeks were crucial. I had to move carefully, quietly, without tipping off anyone at Rosewood about what was coming. My first move was to have my lawyers send a formal notice to the club about their mortgage default. Nothing aggressive, just a polite letter requesting a meeting to discuss the loan terms. Meanwhile, I kept attending club events as usual, pretending everything was normal. It was torture, sitting through their condescending comments and fake smiles, but I needed them to feel completely secure before I struck. During this time, I also learned about the club's most important event of the year, the Founders' Day Gala. It was happening in 2 weeks, a black-tie affair celebrating the club's 131-year history. Every member would be there, along with their families and guests. The mayor was coming, along with 2 senators and half the Boston City Council. It was their most prestigious event, the one they planned all year. Perfect. I made sure to RSVP early, even bought Sarah a new gown for the occasion. When the club secretary called to confirm my attendance, she seemed surprised. "Oh, Mr. Harrison, I wasn't sure you'd be joining us," she said in that sugary sweet tone that barely concealed her disdain. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied. "It's going to be a night to remember." The week before the gala, I had my lawyers draft the foreclosure notice. Massachusetts law required a 30-day notice before foreclosure proceedings could begin, but there was an exception for events of default that posed immediate financial risk to the lender. Since the club had missed 3 consecutive payments, we qualified for expedited proceedings. I also arranged for some special guests to attend the gala. The mayor's office, thinking it was routine business correspondence, had invited several members of the city planning committee. They had no idea they were about to witness the most expensive corporate takeover in Boston's social history. The night before the gala, I couldn't sleep. This wasn't just about money or business, it was personal. These people had tried to humiliate me and Sarah to make us feel small and worthless. Tomorrow, I was going to show them what real power looked like. The Founders' Day Gala was everything you'd expect from old Boston money trying to impress itself. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses. Women dripped in jewelry that could fund small countries, while men wore tuxedos that had probably been tailored by the same families for generations. Sarah looked stunning in her midnight blue gown. As we walked in, I felt the familiar chill of disapproval from the other members, but tonight it didn't bother me. Let them stare. Let them whisper. In a few hours, they'd be singing a very different tune. Preston Whitmore approached us during cocktail hour, champagne glass in hand, that familiar condescending smile plastered on his face. "Marcus, Sarah, how lovely to see you," he said, though his tone suggested it was anything but lovely. "I must say, I was surprised to see your RSVP. I thought perhaps you might be busy with other endeavors." "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world, Preston," I replied, clinking my glass against his. "Tonight's going to be very special." The dinner was the usual affair, overpriced food, served with maximum pretension. I sat through speeches about the club's glorious history, its commitment to excellence, its role in shaping Boston society. Margaret Cabot gave a particularly flowery speech about the importance of preserving traditions and maintaining standards. "Some things," she declared to enthusiastic applause, "are too precious to be cheapened by outside influences." I caught Sarah's eye and smiled. If only she knew. As the evening progressed, I watched the room carefully. The mayor was at the head table, looking bored but politically obligated to be there. The city planning committee members were scattered throughout the room, probably wondering why they'd been invited to such an exclusive event. After dinner, the club president, Victoria Ashworth, took the stage to present the evening's program. She thanked the major donors, recognized long-time members, and announced the club's plans for renovation and expansion. "Thanks to the generous support of our members," she said proudly, "we're planning a $20 million renovation that will ensure Rosewood remains Boston's premier private club for generations to come." The applause was thunderous. These people were so confident, so secure in their little bubble of privilege. They had no idea that their world was about to come crashing down. That's when I made my move. I stood up during the applause, my movement causing a ripple of confusion through the room. This wasn't part of the program. Members didn't just stand up during official presentations. Victoria looked confused as I walked toward the stage. "Excuse me," I said loudly enough to cut through the applause. "Victoria, I wonder if I might have a word?" The room fell silent. This was unprecedented. You didn't interrupt the club president during the Founders' Day Gala. Victoria forced a smile, clearly flustered but trying to maintain decorum. "Marcus, this isn't really the appropriate time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time," I interrupted, climbing the steps to the stage. "You see, I have an announcement that affects everyone in this room." I could see Preston Whitmore half standing at his table, his face red with indignation. Margaret Cabot was whispering furiously to her husband. The mayor looked intrigued. Politicians love drama, especially when it doesn't involve them. I took the microphone from Victoria, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom, "I want to thank you all for such a warm welcome over the past year. You've taught me so much about class, about breeding, about what it really means to belong somewhere." The sarcasm in my voice was subtle but unmistakable. I could see people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. When I first joined Rosewood, I thought membership was about shared interests, mutual respect, maybe even friendship. But you taught me otherwise. You taught me it's really about knowing your place, isn't it? Preston was fully standing now, looking like he was about to have a stroke. "This is highly inappropriate." "Sit down, Preston," I said firmly. "I'm not finished." The power in my voice surprised even me. Preston, probably for the first time in his privileged life, actually sat down when someone told him to. "You see, I've learned that in your world there are two kinds of people, those who belong and those who don't. Those with old money and those with new money. Those with breeding and those without it." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Well, tonight I want to share some good news. You won't have to worry about my new money contaminating your pure bloodlines anymore." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. The rustle of paper in the silent ballroom sounded like thunder. 3 weeks ago, I acquired a controlling interest in Beacon Trust Bank. "Thomas, I should thank you for making that so easy." Thomas Beacon went white as a sheet. I could see him trying to process what this meant, the implications slowly dawning on him. As my first act as the bank's new majority shareholder, I reviewed our loan portfolio. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that Rosewood Country Club has been in default on its $15 million mortgage for the past 4 months. The gasps around the room were audible. Victoria grabbed my arm. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" I gently removed her hand from my arm. "I'm talking about foreclosure, Victoria. You see, under Massachusetts law, when a mortgage is in default, the lender has certain rights." I opened the envelope and pulled out an official-looking document. This is a notice of foreclosure. Effective immediately, Beacon Trust Bank is exercising its right to foreclose on this property due to non-payment of mortgage obligations. The room erupted. People were standing, shouting, demanding explanations. Margaret Cabot looked like she was about to faint. Preston was screaming something about lawsuits and improper procedure. But I wasn't done. "Now, I know what you're thinking," I continued, somehow making my voice carry over the chaos. "Surely there must be some mistake. Surely someone of my background wouldn't have the sophistication to engineer something like this." The room quieted again, everyone hanging on my words. But here's the thing about new money. It comes with new ideas. While you've been sitting here for 131 years, living off your ancestors' achievements, I've been learning how the modern world actually works. I held up another document. This is a purchase agreement. I've just bought your mortgage from my own bank for the full $15 million. Which means as of right now, I own this building, the land it sits on, and everything in it. The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that ballroom. Now, I continued, savoring every word, I want to give you all a choice. The same kind of choice you gave me when you decided I wasn't good enough for your little club. I gestured to the crowd of shocked faces staring up at me. Option 1. You can publicly apologize. Not just to me, but to Sarah and to everyone else you've treated like second-class citizens because they didn't have the right last name or the right pedigree. You can reinstate my membership with a formal apology printed in the club newsletter, and you can implement new policies to ensure that membership is based on character, not bloodlines. Preston found his voice. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm deadly serious, Preston. Because option 2 is much simpler. I shut this place down. Tonight. Security will escort everyone out, the doors will be chained shut, and by next month, this will be a public park. The mayor perked up at this. Public parks meant good press for politicians. I've already spoken with the city planning committee, I continued, nodding toward the confused-looking bureaucrats scattered throughout the room. They're very interested in acquiring this prime waterfront property for public use. Imagine, instead of a place where rich people play golf, this could be a place where families have picnics, where kids learn to sail, where everyone can enjoy the harbor view you've been hoarding for over a century. Margaret Cabot was crying now, actual tears streaming down her face. Victoria looked like she was in shock. Thomas Beacon was staring at his hands, probably calculating how much his family's bank was going to lose when this scandal broke. You have 60 seconds to decide, I announced, checking my watch. Apologize and change, or lose everything. The next minute was the longest of my life. Preston was the first to break. The man who had spent a year making my life miserable, who had publicly humiliated me at the charity auction, who had made Sarah cry in bathroom stalls, slowly stood up. Marcus, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. This was never personal. Oh, but it was, Preston. It was deeply personal. Every snub, every whisper, every time you made Sarah feel unwelcome, that was personal. Victoria stepped forward, her hand shaking. What exactly are you asking for? I pulled out a prepared statement. Read this. Out loud. To everyone here. She took the paper with trembling fingers and read, on behalf of Rosewood Country Club, I formally apologize to Marcus Harrison and Sarah Chun for our unconscionable treatment of them based solely on social prejudice. We acknowledge that our behavior was discriminatory, unwelcoming, and contrary to the values of respect and dignity that should define any civilized organization. Her voice cracked as she continued. We hereby reinstate Mr. Harrison's membership with full privileges and extend a formal invitation to Ms. Chun to become a member in her own right. Furthermore, we commit to reviewing and revising our membership policies to ensure they are based on character and merit, not social pedigree. The ballroom was dead silent as she finished. Then I did something no one expected. I started laughing. That was beautiful, Victoria. Really moving. I took the microphone back. But here's the thing. I don't want to be a member of your club anymore. The confusion on their faces was priceless. You see, this was never about joining your little group. This was about showing you what real power looks like. This was about proving that your breeding and your culture are just pretty words for prejudice and exclusion. I turned to address the entire room. I'm donating this property to the city of Boston to be converted into a public park. The Rosewood Harbor Park will be open to everyone, rich, poor, old money, new money, no money at all. The mayor actually started applauding. I could see him already planning the ribbon-cutting ceremony. As for all of you, I continued, you're welcome to apply for membership at any of the other clubs in the city. I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about tonight. But I wasn't quite finished. I had one more surprise. Oh, and one more thing. Sarah. Sarah stood up, looking confused but trusting. She'd been silent through this whole ordeal, probably shocked by what she was witnessing. Sarah Chun, would you do me the honor of marrying me? I dropped to one knee right there on stage, pulling out a ring that had cost more than most of these people's cars. The diamond caught the chandelier light and threw rainbows across the ceiling. The gasps were audible throughout the ballroom. This was not how anyone had expected the evening to go. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face, but these were happy tears, not the tears she'd shed in bathroom stalls after being snubbed by these people. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. As I slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, I could hear the confused murmur of the crowd. They didn't know whether to applaud, boo, or just leave. I helped Sarah up and took the microphone one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with one final thought. You spent so much time trying to teach me about class, about breeding, about what it means to be worthy of respect. But here's what I learned. Class isn't about how much money your great-grandfather made or what school your mother attended. Class is about how you treat people who can't do anything for you. Class is about lifting others up, not tearing them down. I looked directly at Preston, then at Margaret, then at each of the people who had made my life miserable. By that definition, Sarah has more class in her little finger than this entire room combined. She's a teacher who spends her own money on supplies for kids whose parents can't afford them. She volunteers at soup kitchens and reads to elderly people at nursing homes. She sees the good in everyone, even people who don't deserve it. I paused, letting that sink in. And me? I'm just a kid from a trailer park who got lucky. But at least I remember where I came from. Sarah and I walked off that stage hand in hand through a ballroom full of stunned, silent faces. As we reached the door, I turned back one last time. The club will officially close at midnight tonight. Security will arrive at 12:01 a.m. to ensure the building is vacated. Your personal effects will be available for pickup during business hours next week. And with that, we walked out into the Boston night, leaving behind the most expensive revenge in social history. The story broke in the business papers the next morning. Tech entrepreneur forecloses on exclusive country club was the headline in the Boston Globe. The social media reaction was swift and brutal. Videos of the confrontation had been recorded on multiple phones and went viral within hours. #NewMoneyRevenge was trending by noon. The story was picked up nationally, then internationally. Late-night talk show hosts made jokes about it for weeks. Someone even made a TikTok remix of my speech that got millions of views. But the real victory came 3 months later at the grand opening of Rosewood Harbor Park. Families spread out picnic blankets where Preston Whitmore used to play golf. Kids learned to sail in the harbor that had been reserved for the elite. The city had kept the beautiful gardens, but opened them to everyone. Sarah and I got married there, surrounded by friends and family, real friends, not the fake social climbers from the club. My parents flew in from Ohio, still slightly bewildered by their son's transformation from trailer park kid to multi-millionaire social revolutionary. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I went too far. $15 million is a lot of money to spend on revenge, even for someone with my resources. But then I think about all the other people like Sarah and me who were made to feel small by these arbiters of culture and breeding. The letters started arriving within weeks of the story breaking. Young professionals who'd been blackballed from clubs for similar reasons. Immigrants who'd been made to feel unwelcome despite their success. Women who'd been treated like decorative accessories rather than accomplished individuals in their own right. Each letter reminded me why what I did mattered. It wasn't really about the money or the club. It was about challenging a system that judges people by their ancestry rather than their actions. Preston Whitmore, by the way, resigned from every board he was on within a month. The social embarrassment was too much for someone who'd built his entire identity on being a pillar of proper society. Last I heard, he'd moved to Florida, probably find a new group of people to look down on. Margaret Cabot tried to reinvent herself as a champion of inclusivity, joining various diversity committees around the city. But social media has a long memory, and her transformation was met with deserved skepticism. Thomas Beacon lost his family's bank when the scandal broke, and regulators took a closer look at their lending practices. It turned out the Rosewood mortgage wasn't the only questionable deal they'd made to preserve social relationships over sound banking principles. But the best outcome was Sarah's. She used the media attention to launch a foundation focused on educational equity, funded by a significant portion of my wealth. The Sarah Chun Foundation now provides resources to underserved schools across the country, proving that real class is about what you give back, not what you inherit. We live in a modest house now, modest by billionaire standards anyway. We could afford something much more extravagant, but we learned that happiness doesn't come from impressing people who aren't worth impressing. The irony is that I now get invitations to join exclusive clubs all over the world. Everyone wants to associate with the guy who took down Boston's most elitist institution. But I've learned my lesson about places that define themselves by who they exclude rather than who they welcome. Instead, Sarah and I spend our weekends at Rosewood Harbor Park, watching families enjoy the space that used to be reserved for people who thought their money made them better than everyone else. And every time I see a kid from the projects learning to sail in that harbor, I remember why sometimes the best revenge is simply proving that everyone deserves access to beauty, to opportunity, to respect. The country club voted to expel me for being new money. But in the end, they learned something valuable. New money comes with new rules. And sometimes those rules involve consequences they never saw coming. Class isn't about old money or new money. It's about character. And by that measure, Sarah and I are richer than all of them combined.